I want to tell you something about that moment, though. Something I couldn't see then, but I can see clearly now. That wasn't failure. That was the last page of the old story. The body has a wisdom that goes far beyond what the mind can manage. And sometimes, especially in the most gifted people, the most determined people, the body has to get undeniably loud before the real answer can be heard. And my body was about to get very loud. Welcome to the Resiliency Method, the truth about healing. I'm Dr. Erika, and we are here to uncover the root causes keeping you stuck. Together, we'll restore your energy, your focus, and your resiliency so you can finally heal, regenerate, and feel truly alive again. After 40,000 patient visits and my own 30-year health battle with seizures, thyroid dysfunction, endometriosis, scleroderma, and gastroparesis, I was told by both conventional and alternative medicine to manage it, accept it, and live with it. And I never did. And at nearly age 50, every single one of those conditions is gone without drugs, without hormone replacement, without shortcuts. And what changed wasn't a new protocol, it was learning to ask a completely different question. Welcome to the Resiliency Method, the Truth About Healing podcast. I'm Dr. Erika Schultz. And this show is going to be disruptive because I'm here to help you think more critically about your own health than any system ever has. Because you were designed to heal. And the answers have never been in white coats or the research labs. They've been inside you all along. Every episode ends with what I call the better question. And here's today's. Am I being offered a real answer or just a more comfortable way to stay stuck? Stay with me. This is where real healing begins. Welcome to the Resiliency Method, the Truth About Healing podcast. I'm Dr. Erika Schultz. And if you're listening to this right now, some part of you already knows that what you've been told isn't the whole story. And here's what I know to be true. Your body has been working for you every single moment of your life. Even now, as you hear these words, billions of processes are happening beneath your awareness, restoring, regulating, and reaching toward wholeness. That has never stopped. Today's episode is different because today I'm going to share the story I don't usually tell in full. Not because it's painful, but because buried inside of it is really something extraordinary. A discovery that both conventional and alternative medicine have been slow to acknowledge. That when you address what's actually broken at the deepest level, the body doesn't just cope, it actually heals. Now, you may have already sensed this. Maybe there's been a quiet knowing inside of you, a voice beneath the diagnosis, beneath the protocols, beneath the management plans. That said, this isn't the end of the road. That voice was always right. Think of your body the way you'd think of a river that has been dammed. The water hasn't disappeared. The capacity to flow hasn't gone anywhere. It was just simply blocked. And the moment you begin removing what's in the way, the current will rush forward on its own. That's not hope. That's actual biology. So I'm sharing my complete journey today because I know many of you are standing at exactly the crossroads I once stood at, where you've been offered a lifetime of symptom management and told in so many words to make peace with your limitations. But I want you to feel something shift as you listen. Because if your body is still sending signals, still speaking to you through symptoms, that means the conversation isn't over. It means your body is still asking for something. And you're about to learn what that something is. You have always had more capacity than you were led to believe. And by the time you're done today, you're going to feel that, not just understand it. So let's begin. Act 1, The Ordinary World. So my health journey started when I was just 10 years old. I had stepped on a rusty nail in my backyard. It was a standard childhood injury, and so I got a tetanus shot. That was also standard protocol. But what happened next was anything but standard. Within weeks, I developed shingles on my face. At age 10, a disease or an issue that most commonly is seen in elderly people with compromised immune systems was appearing on the face of a perfectly healthy child. The case was so unusual, they photographed me for medical textbooks. And here's what I want you to really sit with for a moment. A child receives a vaccine, and within weeks, her immune system becomes so dysregulated that her body produces a disease it was never supposed to produce at that age. Those 2 weeks were a kind of torture that I couldn't quite yet understand. The pain was relentless. I missed weeks of school. I remember my mom would wring out a washcloth over my face because even the gentlest touch was agony. But your body, my body, even a 10-year-old's body, is doing something brilliant in moments like this. Because when your body encounters something it cannot immediately eliminate, whether that's an infection, a vaccine adjuvant, or an environmental toxin, it does exactly what a wise architect would do. It builds a wall around it. It encapsulates it. It protects your vital organs, your glands, your tissues from what it cannot yet process. Now, in that moment, my body was not failing. My body was actually protecting me. I just didn't know it then. And nobody really connected that for me. It was not then and not for decades, really, truly, afterward. But that moment, that seemingly ordinary childhood injury and its standard medical response was truly the beginning of a conversation my body had been trying to have with me for more than 30 years. Act 2, The Call to Adventure. So the seizures started in my adolescence, and at first they were infrequent enough to explain away. But they followed a pattern, and somewhere inside me I knew patterns mean something. The medical professionals had a clear message. Here's a medication. You'll probably have these for the rest of your life. Not let's investigate why this is happening. Not let's find where this is coming from. Just management. Acceptance. A lifetime prescription for a symptom that really nobody was willing to trace its source. Now, here's something I want you to notice because you may recognize this feeling in your own body. I knew there was more to this than meets the eye. I knew there was more to the story. Not intellectually, but I felt it. And that deep, quiet, cellular knowing that says, this isn't random. Something's causing this. But conventional medicine wasn't really interested in that why, just the what, just the management. Then came the thyroid dysfunction, the hormone chaos, the periods that were irregular and brutal and relentless. And so I made a choice that changed the trajectory of everything. I started looking somewhere else. Natural medicine, functional medicine, alternative practitioners. This is where things should have gotten better. And in some ways, really a lot of ways they did, but not in the ways that I needed most. Act 3, The Alternative Path and a Different Kind of Gaslighting. Here's what almost nobody talks about. And I'm going to talk about it because I know it's one of the most important things you'll hear today. I left conventional medicine because they offered me lifelong management instead of answers. But what I found in natural medicine wasn't always better. It was just a different kind of dismissal, wearing different clothes. And when the natural protocols didn't work, when I tried the supplements, the cleanses, the dietary overhauls, and I still struggled, the message shifted. Instead of take this pill forever, it became you're holding on to stress. You need to work on your mindset. Have you considered this is spiritual? One practitioner went so far as to suggest my seizures were demonic possession, that I needed to repent more effectively, and I needed to pray. Well, if you've never experienced a seizure before, one of the most terrifying things you can do is fall down, lose consciousness, and lose control of your body. And talk about vulnerability in that moment. So, the experience that maybe I needed to pray more or handle my emotions better or my stress better was really frustrating to me. And still, that knowingness inside of me was such that I knew that there was more to the story on a physiological level. So let that land for a moment. I had just left a system that said, accept lifelong illness. I came to a system promising root causes. And when their protocols couldn't reach deep enough, they turned the failure into my fault. I was no longer a patient. I was a project that hadn't done her inner work. And I want to say something directly to anyone who has been told that their body's symptoms are a reflection of their emotional inadequacy or their spiritual inadequacy or their spiritual failing, their unresolved trauma. Your body has never been wrong about what it needs. The systems failed to find it. This is the invisible trap, the gap between two worlds. Conventional medicine says manage it forever. Alternative medicine says if you're not healing, you're not believing enough, processing enough, surrendering enough. Both systems were missing the same thing, the actual physiology. And here's what I know that I couldn't articulate then. Your body doesn't gaslight you. Your body is always, in every moment, doing its level best with the resources it has available. And the question was never, is my body capable of healing? The question was, what does it actually need to do so? Act 4, crossing the first threshold, graduate school. So I entered graduate school to study Chinese medicine and acupuncture and functional nutrition on the weekends. And something began to shift because for the first time I was learning about real detoxification, not the trendy 2-week cleanse version of detox, the actual physiological reality of how your body eliminates waste and how elimination pathways get blocked and how to support liver function, lymphatic drainage, cellular cleanup. I learned it and I applied it to myself immediately. And something remarkable happened. For the first time in my adult life, I got better. The seizures reduced dramatically. I came off the seizure medication for a short while. My energy returned, my skin cleared, and the weight, it fell away. For the first time in my life, I was living a body that felt like it was working with me instead of against me. And I thought, I found it. I've cracked the code. I was so close. And I was also missing something I couldn't yet see. Because what I didn't understand then, and what took me years more to learn, is that there are layers to this. Like an archaeologist who brushes away the surface sediment and thinks they found the artifact, I had only really reached the first layer of healing. And the deepest layers were still waiting. And my body was patient enough to keep telling me so. Act 5, the false victory. About a year into my healing, everything fell apart. The seizures came back, and they came back harder, more frequent, more intense, as though they'd been gathering strength while I thought I was winning. And then I discovered the truth about my weight loss. It wasn't really health, it was my thyroid misfiring. It was an imbalanced diet created in my attempt to clean up my eating. I was eating no carbs. I had pushed my thyroid into overdrive. The weight I lost wasn't from healing, it was from dysfunction by the techniques that were supposed to be helping me. So I did what any determined person would do. I was just kept going. More protocols, more cleanses, different supplements, different approaches. I didn't give up. because I knew there really was no going back to the conventional medicine. And I know many of you listening probably haven't either. You're still seeking, and you know inside that there's more to know. But I really want you to feel what this is like because so many of you know this experience from the inside. The relentless cycle, try something, feel better, crash, try something else, feel better, crash again. The temporary lift, the inevitable descent, the question that starts to haunt you, is this just how it is for me? I kept managing, I kept at it, I kept cycling, I kept researching for the next answer. But here's what I understand now that I didn't understand then. I wasn't failing. I wasn't broken. I wasn't missing some crucial piece of willpower or belief. It wasn't my poor spiritual behavior or my lack of emotional resilience that others projected upon me. I was addressing the surface brilliantly, diligently, consistently, while the deeper cause remained untouched. The river was still dammed, and I just had been clearing debris from the banks of it, and I kept clearing and clearing. Act 6, the descent. Quote, then the descent began in earnest. The weight came back rapidly. Despite doing everything right, my lymph backed up throughout my body. I was bloated, inflamed, barely recognizable to myself in the mirror. The scleroderma appeared hardened patches of skin on my shoulders and under my arms. My body was changing at a tissue level, visibly, undeniably. Gastroparesis developed. My stomach stopped emptying properly. Eating, one of the most basic, fundamental human experiences, became painful. The kyphosis became visible as I entered perimenopause, my spine curving forward, my posture changing, rashes, body odor, brain fog, digestive distress that seemed to have no bottom. And here's the part of the story that carries a particular kind of weight. Because I was a practitioner at this point, I was seeing clients. I was helping other people heal. I was seeing some of the most gifted, experienced, genuinely brilliant practitioners myself, and people with extraordinary techniques and remarkable track records. And even their best work wasn't reaching deep enough for what was happening inside of me. Then came the moment that should have been a triumph. I was invited on stage to accept an award for being an outstanding practitioner. And the day before that ceremony, I had a massive seizure and sprained my ankle very badly. I stood on that stage nonetheless, though, the next day and accepted the award and smiled for the photographers and felt like a complete fraud. Here I was, recognized for excellence in healing while privately cycling through the same protocols, getting the same temporary results, experiencing the same crashes, carrying the same conversation with my body, getting the same non answer. I want to tell you something about that moment, though. Something I couldn't see then, but I can see clearly now. That wasn't failure. That was the last page of the old story. The body has a wisdom that goes far beyond what the mind can manage. And sometimes, especially in the most gifted people, the most determined people, the body has to get undeniably loud before the real answer can be heard. And my body was about to get very loud. Act 7, the breaking point. So the real breaking point came at an annual conference with my colleagues. I had walking pneumonia, not the kind that puts you in bed, the kind where you're sick enough to be walking stiffly, sick enough to feel terrible, but not sick enough to stop. So you keep going and you keep functioning, you keep showing up, you keep pretending. I sat in that conference hall surrounded by some of the most brilliant minds in natural medicine, and something dropped into place that I hadn't been able to articulate before. The relationship I had with my body was like a couple who'd been together for years, having the same exact argument over and over again, same words, same patterns, same outcomes, same unresolved tension. I would detox, feel better, crash, detox again, feel better, crash. Parasite cleanse after parasite cleanse, just kept cycling over the same things. My body had been sending the same signal for decades, and I had been responding the same way for decades. Not because I wasn't trying, because I wasn't listening to what the signal was actually saying. And then sitting in that room with walking pneumonia, surrounded by brilliance that wasn't quite reaching the root, I looked around at my own clients in my mind's eye. These were people who had come to me after being told by conventional medicine that their symptoms were all in their head, that they needed antidepressants, medications, that stress management was the answer. The perfect diet or more exercise was the answer. And then they came to natural medicine seeking root causes. Many of them get better, genuinely better, but so many were also stuck in exactly the cycle I was. Protocols that had worked, then stopped working, good weeks followed by crashes. And in that moment, I understood something that changed everything. The protocols and approaches weren't wrong, they just weren't deep enough. We were all, every gifted practitioner I knew, including myself, addressing the surface layers of toxicity, doing it brilliantly, doing it with tremendous skill and care. But the encapsulated toxicity, the stuff stored in fat cells and fascia and tissue since childhood, quite frankly, maybe even birth, we were barely touching that. And nobody had a map to that layer. And until someone did, we would all keep having the same conversation, the same cycle, the same temporary victories followed by the same confusing crashes. The body had been waiting patiently, persistently, loudly for someone to finally listen at the level where the real message was being sent. Are you tired of treatments, protocols, and gurus who promise results but don't deliver? You're not alone. For years, I struggled with my own long-term illness, and I know how frustrating it feels when nothing seems to work. That's why I developed the Resiliency Method. It's a science-backed approach to combining the best of Western and ancient medicines to restore your body's natural intelligence. Patient after patient has discovered what's possible, living stronger, brighter, and more spiritually connected than ever before. Whether you're facing autoimmune issues, hormonal imbalances, weight struggles, or just feeling stuck, you don't need another quick fix. You need a clear path forward. Take the first step with a discovery call at drerikaonline.com/discovery. That's DRERIKA online.com/discovery. Or dive deeper with a full initial consultation at drerikaonline.com/initial-consultation, because your health, your clarity, and your freedom cannot wait. Act 8, meeting the true mentor. That's when everything changed. That's when I found the missing piece. The vagus nerve. Now, I want you to imagine something as I explain this. Imagine you've been living in a house for years and there's a fuse box in the basement, and every circuit in the fuse or in the house runs through it. The lights, the heating, the refrigerator, the alarm system, everything. And for years, you've been replacing the light bulbs, adjusting the thermostats, resetting individual appliances, getting partial, temporary results. Nobody told you there was a fuse box. Well, in your body, the vagus nerve is the fuse box. It's the longest cranial nerve in your body. It runs from the brainstem through your face, your throat, your heart, your lungs, and all the way down through your digestive organs. It's the master conductor of your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest, digest, and ability to heal system. And here's what I suddenly saw with absolute clarity. The vagus nerve connects and controls or directly influences virtually every symptom I had ever experienced. And I want to tell you that the vagus nerve probably affects virtually every symptom you've ever experienced. But let's get back to me. The seizures, for sure, vagal nerve dysfunction. In fact, we're using now vagus nerve stimulators, implanting them inside chronic seizure patients. So for sure that was involved in that condition. The vagal nerve dysfunction also affected my digestion. The gastroparesis, well, the vagus nerve literally controls how your stomach empties. When it's compromised or isn't fully healed, the digestion stalls. Thyroid dysfunction, hello, vagal nerve connection through the cervical spine, the back of your neck. hormone imbalances, the entire hypothalamic pituitary adrenal cascade, vagal nerve influence, immune dysregulation leading to scleroderma and autoimmune conditions. The vagus nerve is the primary regulator of inflammation and immune response. Lymphatic congestion, vagal tone directly affects lymphatic flow. The kyphosis, the postural changes, the vagus nerve influences muscle tone and spinal control. Every single symptom. Not random, not emotional, not unrelated, not mysterious. Connected through one master system that nobody had really thoroughly examined. But the question that cracked everything open wasn't what does the vagus nerve do? It was what compromises it? And the answer arrived like a key turning in a lock that had been stuck for 30 years. Deep encapsulated toxicity. Not the kind you address with a 2-week cleanse or even a few months or even several years at surface level toxicity protocols. We're talking about the toxicity that's stored in your tissues, your fascia, your cells, sometimes since childhood. The toxicity your brilliant protective body had walled off because it lacked the resources to eliminate it. The childhood shingles episode after the tetanus shot, that wasn't where my story started going wrong. That's where my body started its most heroic decades-long act of protection. And as that encapsulated toxic burden grew over 30 years, and as it slowly progressively compromised vagal nerve function even more, every symptom followed as naturally as night follows day. This wasn't failure, this was physiology. And this understanding whispered something I want you to hear right now. Wherever you are, whatever you've been told, you are not broken. You are not emotionally blocked. You are not failing. You just haven't been given a map that goes deep enough. Until now. Act 9, crossing the real threshold. Crossing this threshold meant committing to something I had never done before. Not another cleanse, not another 6-week protocol, not another supplement stack. A complete physiological reset, properly sequenced, deep enough to actually reach what had been stored for decades. And I want to be honest with you about this, the way I wish someone had been honest with me, because this honesty is a form of respect. The journey to deep detoxification is physiologically challenging. Things can get more intense before they ease, because when you finally give your body the support it needs to release what it's been storing for protection, it begins to release it. And this isn't a side effect. This isn't failure. This is your body finally doing what it has always wanted to do and couldn't. Heal. That is to heal. Think of it like a river that's been dammed for decades. When you finally remove the obstruction, the water doesn't trickle out gently. It rushes, it surges. There's turbulence before there's flow. But on the other side of that turbulence is flow. What this reset required was precision. It required supporting every detoxification pathway, liver, kidneys, lymphatic system, skin, lungs, so they could handle what was about to be released. Using proper whole food supplements so that toxins, as they are released, would be captured and escorted out rather than recirculating and redepositing. Working at the fascial level, the cellular level, the mitochondrial level, where the encapsulation actually lived. Simultaneously restoring vagal nerve tone so that my body's master regulatory system could guide the process. And doing all of this in the right sequence, because your body is not just capable of healing, it's elegant in how it heals. When given the right conditions in the right order and at the right time, man, this is where the real journey begins. Not the journey of management, not the journey of blame, not the journey of root cause resolution. Act 10, tests and allies. So when you genuinely detoxify at a deep cellular level, when your body finally begins releasing what has been encapsulating for protection, things intensify before they ease. I mean, intensify. The rashes became a little bit more pronounced. My skin was a little bit working overtime to deal with what the liver couldn't process fast enough at times. There was fatigue at times. There was swelling at times. Because your body's extraordinarily intelligent, and so in a resource allocation and deep detoxification commands really enormous energy. Energy that has previously been diverted to management was now being directed to resolution. The brain fog worsened temporarily as neurotoxins stored in fatty tissues released into circulation. Old symptoms resurfaced briefly, purposefully, as the body processed the original sources. And here's what made this fundamentally different from every crash I've ever experienced before. This time, I understood what was happening. Every symptom had a mechanism. Every intensification had an explanation rooted in pure physiology. It was managed through my practitioner, who was a strong resource for me, walking side by side with me. Thank you, Lyric Turner. My body wasn't betraying, my body was actually working. And I was seeing my clients who were diligently trusting my leadership in this new territory, repeating similar patterns in their healing process, despite having different in their own symptom picture or history. I had allies now, not in the form of practitioners telling me what to do, but in the form of understanding. I knew about bile flow. I knew about all the toxins get packaged in the bile and require proper bile function to exit, et cetera, et cetera. About how our ancestors detox without the use of fancy binders and chelators, because at this level, my own body and my clients' bodies were responding with a new level of intelligence, one that was deeply programmed inside of each of us. And that because of the exposure and the levels of toxins we've encountered in the last century plus, wasn't really enough to keep their bodies clean and functioning. We were detoxing simply through whole foods by adding increasing B vitamins, fatty acids, minerals. We were doing this just the same way our ancestors did, which was amazing to see and such a progression forward. Chinese medicine had opened a door. Graduate school had given me a language. Functional medicine gave me the tools to communicate better with my clients. But now I was going deeper than any map I had been handed. I was drawing a new one, and one built not on symptom management, natural or otherwise, but on actual physiological resolution. One that answered the question both systems had been unable to answer. Why? Act 11, the ordeal. The ordeal lasted months. There were some days I couldn't function the way I was used to functioning as my body was overcoming its deepest burdens. But my body is also brilliant, so it was never to an extent that I couldn't function because my body was letting go gradiently and I was sleeping more deeply than I'd ever in my life. But there were some bad nights of sleep sprinkled in at times. But I knew instinctively, even when my body was more fatigued, that this is not damage, this is release. And slowly, at first, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. The seizures became less frequent, then rare, then they stopped completely. After decades of being told by conventional medicine that I would have them for the rest of my life, after years of natural practitioners suggesting the problem was spiritual or emotional, the seizures resolved. When I finally reached the actual physiological cause, which was vagus nerve dysfunction, driven by deep encapsulated toxicity, the gastroparesis resolved, my stomach healed, vagal tone restored, my stomach began emptying again, eating became what it was always meant to be, nourishment, the lymphatic swelling began to reduce. My body could finally move what it had been forced to store. The scleroderma, those hardened patches of skin that had been my body's tissue level response to toxic encapsulation, had begun to soften. And as the toxins released, the tissue normalized. The thyroid stabilized, the hormones balanced on their own in the middle of perimenopause. Not through replacement, not through suppression, through restoration. And the weight shifted, not from diet restriction, food avoidance and elimination, or GLP-1 drugs or peptides, not from a thyroid in overdrive this time, but from genuine metabolic restoration, from dealing and treating and resolving a fatty liver, which many of you have. This is the root of your metabolic dysfunction. From a body that no longer was allocating its resources to containment, I want you to really take this in. None of this happened because I finally resolved my emotional blocks. None of this happened because I found the right affirmation. None of this happened because I found the magic pill, the magic biohack. This happened because my body was given what it needed to do, what it has always known how to do. It happened because I honored the process and I gave it time to heal. It was like a shift happened. My body and I were not speaking the same language, but now they are. Your body has never forgotten how to heal. It has been waiting for the right conditions to heal. Act 12, seizing the reward, perimenopause without symptoms. The real test, the one I hadn't anticipated, came when I entered perimenopause, really. This is the threshold that so many women approach with dread. So many stories about how this is normal. It's not normal, ladies. The hot flashes, the mood swings, the brain fog, the insomnia, the weight gain, the sense that your body is changing beneath you in ways you can't control. I have been conditioned to expect all of it, and so have you. And it's crap. What I experienced instead was something I could not have predicted, even as I was doing the work. Nothing. No hot flashes, no mood swings, no brain fog, no insomnia, no unexplained weight gain. Instead, improvement. Continued measurable, visible improvement. My kyphosis stopped progressing. Then it began to reverse. My spine straightened as inflammation reduced, and proper nerve signaling returned to postural muscles. My skin became clearer and more supple than it had been in my 30s and with fewer age spots, not more. My energy increased, my mental clarity, the kind that lets you think in full sentences, follow complex threads, hold spaces for other people, surpassed what I'd been in my 20s. And people who hadn't seen me in a few years started saying, "You look 10 years younger than you did 5 years ago." And they were right, because here's what I now understand to be true: physiology, not philosophically. When you remove the toxic burden that has been accelerating premature aging, when you restore the vagus nerve function that regulates everything, when you optimize your immune system, your body does what it has always been designed to do. It thrives. This wasn't luck. This wasn't exceptional genetics. Oh, I have the worst genetics. This wasn't a mindset transformation. This was the result of finally giving a brilliantly intelligent body the physiological conditions it needed, supporting the innate intelligence of it. And what happened to me is possible for you, not as a promise, as a physiological reality available to any body that receives the right support at the right depth. Act 13, Resurrection. I'm not the same person who stood on that stage accepting an award while privately feeling like a fraud. That version of me was caught between two systems, both of which were doing their best, and both of which were missing the same piece. The resurrected version of me understands something I want to offer you now, as clearly as I can say it. Most conditions that have been labeled chronic are not inherently chronic. They are unaddressed at the proper depth. The label chronic often means we have not found the root. Not the root doesn't exist. Not your body can't heal. Simply, we haven't looked deep enough yet. And emotional, when it's used to explain why a protocol isn't working, is often just a polite way of saying, we've run out of physiological explanations. It transfers the responsibility of the system's limitations onto the person who came seeking help. You came to the right place. You asked the right questions. You tried the right things. The systems just weren't offering maps that went deep enough. I'm in my late 40s now. I'm actually almost 50. I'm going to be 50 in 2 months. I feel better than I did at 25. The seizures are gone. My thyroid healed. My hormones moved through perimenopause without incident. My digestion is effortless and my lymph flows better now than it ever has. My energy is consistent. My spine is straight. My skin is clear and youthful. And all these conditions are such without synthetic chemicals being used to achieve them. No Botox, no fillers, no hormone replacement, no hacking, just plain old healing. 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 And what I want you to carry with you from this story is this. I tried everything. I saw remarkable practitioners. I did the cleanses, the protocols, the elimination diets, the supplement regimens. I worked with very gifted healers. None of it was wrong. It just wasn't deep enough. And what changed everything was accessing the layer that had never been reached and restoring the master regulatory system that had been quietly compromised for decades as a result. And that is what your body is waiting for. Not more management, not more emotional investigation into your childhood drama. The right support at the right depth in the right sequence. Act 14. Return with the elixir. The elixir I bring back, the thing I went through all of that to find, is the resiliency method. And I built it for two very specific people. The first is you. If you recognize yourself anywhere in my story, if you've been caught between a system that offers you lifelong management and a system that offers you lifelong blame, if you've been cycling through protocols, experiencing temporary results, then crashing again, if you feel like you've been having the same conversation with your body, the same argument, the same unresolved tension for months or years or decades, you're not broken. You've just been working with incomplete maps. And the second is practitioners, people like I was, who have genuinely powerful techniques, real skill, and most of all, authentic care for their clients, but are watching those clients hit a ceiling they can't explain, who know something is missing but haven't been able to name it. The resiliency method is built on a truth that changes everything. Once you fully receive it, when you address encapsulated toxicity at the proper depth and you restore the thymus gland and the vagal nerve function through systematically sequenced detoxification followed by nourishing, the body can heal from conditions that both conventional and natural medicine have labeled chronic. Not as an exception, as a predictable physiological outcome. This isn't another cleanse. This isn't another protocol you cycle through for 6 weeks. This is not emotional work dressed up in physiological language. This is a systematic, sequenced, physiological, precise approach to releasing what has been stored since childhood. The toxicity your body encapsulated out of sheer intelligence, waiting for the day you could finally give it the support to let go. Restoring the pathways that have been overwhelmed, not by bypassing them, not managing, actually restoring them. Returning your vagal tone so that your body's master regulatory system can do what it has always been designed to do. And doing all of this in the right order, because your body is not just capable of healing, it's capable of orchestrating its own healing, given the right conditions. And here's what I want you to understand, and what I wish someone had told me 30 years ago. That childhood exposure is still in there, and your body has been working around it ever since. Those symptoms that seem unrelated are not unrelated. They are connected through a system nobody thought to examine. Surface level detox is not enough for deep encapsulation. You deserve to go deeper. My conditions, my symptoms were the result of deeper encapsulations, and with good certainty, so are yours. And even symptoms that you aren't experiencing yet that you will age into, specifically in the area of cognitive decline and neurodegenerative conditions. Perimenopause is not inevitable decline. It is a transition from your body that can navigate with clarity and vitality if its regulatory systems are functioning well. And aging poorly is not written to your DNA. It is accumulated toxic burden that can be addressed. And if natural protocols aren't working for you, you're not the problem. They are just not going deep enough yet. This is what the resiliency method was built to do. This is what your body has been waiting for. This is what I now teach practitioners who are seeing the same limitations that I saw. So if you've been listening to this today and something in you has been quietly saying yes to parts of the story, I want you to trust that. That quiet knowing, that recognition, that sense of finally someone's describing what I have been experiencing. That's not wishful thinking. That's your body's intelligence recognizing something true. If conventional medicine has told you to manage it forever, if natural practitioners have suggested that your unresolved symptoms reflect your unresolved emotions or spiritual inadequacies, if you've done the cleanses, the supplements, the dietary overhauls, if you get better for a while and then you crash, If you feel like you've been having the same conversation with your body on repeat, let me tell you what I know now with absolute certainty. You are not broken. You are not emotionally blocked or spiritually inadequate. You are not failing. You are not too complicated, too far gone, or too chronic to heal. You are just not going deep enough yet. The surface level work you've done has not been wasted. Every step you've taken has been your body moving toward this moment, this understanding, this deeper map. The journey into deep detoxification is physiologically real. You may experience retracing. You will need to properly support pathways that have been compromised, perhaps for years. The work is not always comfortable. The work is not always comfortable or blissful, but the reward, and I want you to feel this, not just hear it, is not another good week before the next crash. The reward is breaking the cycle. It's having a different conversation with your body, one where it can finally release what it's been holding, one where it can finally move toward resolution rather than management. The reward is entering perimenopause, menopause, any decade and beyond, whatever it is for you, as you age with vitality rather than decline. The reward is looking back at the version of yourself who felt caught, who felt blamed, who felt like a fraud, or sitting in a waiting room or quietly Googling symptoms at midnight and knowing that was the last chapter of the old story. This is the beginning of the new one. And you don't have to accept lifelong management. You don't have to accept that it's all emotional. You don't have to keep cycling through the same protocols and wondering what's wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. Your body has an extraordinary, innate, physiologically grounded capacity to fully heal. When it finally receives the support it needs at the depth it actually requires. This is the Resiliency Method. And your journey into that deeper healing begins the moment you decide the old conversation is over. Thank you for being here today. If any part of this story lived in yours, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're ready to go deeper than you've ever gone before, visit paramount.well to take the next step. Until next time, remember, you're not failing, you're not blocked, you're not broken. You just haven't gone deep enough yet. I'm Dr. Erika Schultz. This is the Resiliency Method. Thanks for tuning into the Resiliency Method, the Truth About Healing podcast. If this episode spoke to you, follow, share, and leave us a review. Are you ready to go deeper? Book your discovery call now at drericaonline.com/discovery and take your first step today.